Well, you were still in 3 in September when we decided to get married.
Well, that probably when they sent me my notice that I was 1A
Yeah.
to
But they, he didn't. They wouldn't give him a deferment after that. So he went in. Then he went in. When did you had to have a physical and everything before we got married, didn't you?
a couple times, yeah.
Yeah.
So then, just decided I ain't gonna play around that way with the draft and all. We got married in November. Well, I kept plugging for deferments for a year then, and they finally said no more. And, after Jimmy was born, well, then they said this is it. So I went. Jimmy was 2 months old then.
Yeah.
But it.
So you went in January.
Yeah.
But
it was.
We bought the little house on Van Buren Street. And,
oh, you had already bought the house in the 200 block?
Mm-hmm. Three something, wasn't it?
212.
212, yeah. Okay. And then I lived in it for a while while Dad was still here in the States. But then he came home in August just on a 3-day pass, and he said he was going to go overseas then. So
what they called shipping out then.
yeah. So then Jimmy he went in January then, and no, he shipped out in August or September.
Now this is August of 43.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. That he went overseas, and then I lived in the house all that winter, but then I think it was in January of 44 that Jimmy I got the flu real bad, and Benny came and got me with Mr. Sims because she didn't have any car then either, and took me home, and I stayed there for about a week. And then when it looked like Dad was going to be over for a while, they insisted that I come and live there while he was gone. So I went back home to live in February of 44, I think it was. And I stayed there until then. I rented the house. All the rest of the time Dad was gone. And then right after the Japanese quit in September, after they bombed the Hiroshima, why they quit, then they signed the peace thing and everything. So
okay, for the benefit of people watching, I've neglected to introduce everybody here. My name's Jack Rich, and I'm the son of these lovely people, and this is the occasion of about a month prior to Jim and Mary Louise's 50th wedding anniversary. This, of course, is Edgar James Rich and Mary Louise Rich, my parents. We're at Fish Point, where they now reside, near Unionville. The exact address is 8956 Miller Road, Fish Point, Unionville, Michigan. We were talking with Mom about the war years, and we had just ended up forcing the Japanese to surrender after Hiroshima. What I'd like to talk a little about is what it was like for you living in Bay City during the war with Dad gone, and I realize you moved back with your folks there for a while. But what was life like in Bay City? We weren't here then, most of us, and we don't know what it
Well,
was like?
of course, there were a lot of people that had not lost their sons, but had gone into the service. And like myself, my husband was gone. He left just when Jim was just 2.5 months old. And
By
I
Jim,
left,
you mean young Jim,
yeah,
your first son.
yeah. And I lived in our little home on Van Buren Street from January of 43 until August of 43. Dad came home on a 3-day pass, and we knew after that he was going to be sent overseas.
What did, you know, did you continue working then during that time, or did you stay home?
Oh no, I stayed home.
Did you? And who did you live with? Didn't you live on Keystone Street in Banks?
When I went, then after Dad went back in August of 43, then I moved back home. Yeah, in Banks on Keystone Street with where my grandparents had practically raised me, because I lost my mother when I was about 4.5 years old. And when Dad remarried, we didn't want to go to live there. Our home was in Banks. That's the way we felt.
Well, who else lived in the house with you?
My grandfather and grandmother, and my Aunt Ben, and my Aunt Viv. They were both my dad's sisters.
Okay. Now Ben is her real name is what?
Genevieve.
Genevieve. Okay. Genevieve Herrick, right?
Right.
H-E-R-I-C.
Right. And of course, my own sister was with us.
Mary Florance.
Yeah.
Okay. But day-to-day life would have been what for you then? Just taking care of the house, taking care of Jim?
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things a little slower back then than they are now?
Oh yes, very much so. And I mean, some of the foods were rationed. You know, you had stamps to use, and
What kinds of food were rationed?
butter was rationed, and sugar was rationed.
Meat.
Yeah, some meat. Not too much. Meat wasn't too bad, but got pretty expensive.
No, by ration, you mean you had to have
Food stamps,
Coupons.
coupons.
coupons. Where did you get the coupons?
I think you had to, I don't remember where I got the coupons.
I don't either.
Were they through a bank by any chance, or?
No, not the bank.
The merchants had to take them to banks to be accounted for.
Yeah, but
But you don't recall who distributed them, eh?
no,
No,
I
something
really
different.
don't.
Okay. Well,
Well, one thing in passing about the war years, Defoe Shipyard was building Liberty ships. They were putting out one a week. They had an assembly line. It was innovative, and they used to build the hull upside down because it was easier for the welders to weld down than up. And then the hull was assembled, and they had it on a great big hollow wheel, and the whole hull was rolled over to an upright position to be finished then before launching. But at the same time, there was a contingent of Coast Guardsmen and sailors, Navy men. Coast Guardsmen were guards for the shipyard, and the Navy crew were there to operate the ships as they were sent down Saginaw River and eventually to Louisiana for finishing through the Mississippi River. But the life in Bay City at that time, you couldn't get away from sailors. They were all over, sailors and Coast Guardsmen. And they took the place of the boys that were drafted. So there was never a want for dates for the girls.
But your mother didn't date.
Well, you were married then.
Where were they? Where were they stationed? Where did they stay?
They stayed at the old Knights of Columbus building. The Knights of Columbus donated or rented for I don't know, $1 a year, I guess it was, the building to the government for housing for the sailors and Coast Guardsmen. And the Knights of Columbus, one night a week, could have their meeting at, well, in the what they called the parlor.
Now, what are you talking about? The one at Van Buren Center?
Yeah.
Yes, the building on 900 Center.
Which, of course, has been torn down since.
Yes, it was an old home built by the Churchill people. And Knights of Columbus bought it way back in the 20s, I believe, or earlier, and used it for their council rooms, and it had a big, not a big, dance floor up the third floor, but it was a good floor, hard wood, and also
The fireplaces in that place.
yeah, there was about a
Oh, I remember the building myself.
Yeah.
I remember being in it.
so. But getting back to the war times, the gasoline was rationed.
Yeah. Of course.
What was your feeling at that time? I mean, it seems to me there'd almost be a constant state of anxiety for people back
there
here.
was. You listen to the news. You listen to the news at night, especially at 6 o'clock. And I'm trying to think of the announcer's name that came on. And if we had had a good day overseas, why he'd say, "Well, it was a good day today," or "We did this or we did that today." But then he'd come on with news that, just flattened you out on the floor sometimes, when they, especially when the Battle of the Bulge. That was terrible.
Well, now, how threatened did you feel in terms of your own safety here? I've heard that there were actually instances where a Japanese or a German submarine would get close to a harbor here, or that there were even reports that somebody shelled the coast of California one time. I don't know how accurate that was. I mean, did you ever feel really threatened? That
Not really, not in Bay City. They said one time there were, after the Japanese came into it, they said there were two-man Japanese subs that they weren't in California. They were like off the southern coast, like Texas, but I don't know how true that was. There was a lot of stories about.
So you didn't really feel threatened
Not
in terms of your own safety,
no,
just your
it was
family's
just,
safety.
yeah, right.
Your loved ones that were in the war.
Yeah,
And practically everybody had somebody
yeah,
in the war.
right.
Dad, tell me, what was it like for you being overseas, and what were the things that you were feeling, not so much where you were, but what you were feeling back then?
Oh, the separation, different way of life. I was probably 3, 4 to 5 or 6 years older than most of the servicemen, because I went in at 27 years of age, and at that time they were drafting men, boys, immediately after they graduated from high school. So there was that much difference in the ages. So my outlook on it was different than theirs. Once I got into it, and especially when I was shipped overseas, I was determined to make the best of it. And going overseas, I knew I'd never get back over there, so I was determined to see everything I could and feel everything I could, and just, I guess, say enjoy is the wrong expression, but I did see a lot from the.
So you took kind of a positive attitude that, you know, let's
Yeah.
let's do what we're not going to be able to do when we get
Again?
back home.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
And I fully intended to come back. I wasn't going to get killed. That was my attitude. And I didn't know at the time where, when we shipped, just where we would land. We weren't told where we were going to go till we recognized the Rock of Gibraltar. It was that secret.
I mean, when you first went over?
Yeah, our destination. We knew we were on the Atlantic because we shipped out of New York. Or was it
Yeah, you shipped
New
out
Jersey? I don't know
came
what.
back into
in
New
that,
Jersey. You came back into New Jersey.
Yeah. The trip over was pleasant enough. It was in August, nice weather, and but we landed in Iran, where the culture shock was noticeable.
You landed in Iran?
Iran in Algeria.
Oh, Oran.
Oran.
Oran, Algeria. Okay.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned before, from there we went by truck to Algiers. But the culture shock with the Arabs and their different dress and certainly their language, I didn't know that. I knew a little French. French was the big language there, principal language in Algeria, because there was a large number of French people living there. They had most of the businesses, and then when we got to Algiers, the shops were pretty much as they were pictured in Paris. Little dressmaking shops on one street, several shops, and then another street would be butcher shops. I forget the names, what they called them. Then, of course, there were taverns, sidewalk cafes, and
Before he left, of course, after they got overseas, they could write those, what they call
V-mail.
V-mail, yeah. But before he left, he wrote me a letter and told me that, took the different parts of our home and told me that would be the section, whatever section he was in. So I knew practically where he was, with the exception of the 3 weeks that he crossed from Africa to Italy. They were on the Mediterranean, and they had to, there was still subs and stuff around, so but I knew.
So you had a little code worked out so you'd know where he was,
Yeah,
and that was based on the rooms in the house?
right,
Well, that's pretty clever.
yeah. And
I'd mentioned that room in that letter.
Uh-huh.
The only time I mentioned the house was to indicate I'm telling you something.
Yeah.
yeah,
I tried to be specific at one time on the letters, and I thought somebody would pick it up, but I indicated several letters in a row. First letter, I'd say this is my first letter from our new location, or the first letter in this tent. And first letter, I wrote that about 10 letters, mentioned first letter.
Uh-huh.
Well, and also I had drawn a Christmas candle. It was about that season. On one side of the V-mail, There were only one page. But the first letter in each letter were to be put together, and they did spell Allied Force Headquarters after all the letters were sent. But Mama never did.
I don't think
I don't know that I would have either.
No,
until
not
you just
really.
mentioned
Well,
it.
I just felt it'd be so strange to have somebody mention first letter in every letter. See,
Yeah.
these letters are censored,
Yeah.
and
Well, and a couple of times, a couple of things he did say, it was crossed out. So,
Oh, is that right?
yeah, so you had to be pretty careful.
you try and see how far you could go.
It was kind of a game you played with the sensors.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To see what you
Everybody
yeah.
played games with the censors.
Oh, is that right? Okay, well,
Some man I worked with in the office had to go, and he was older too when he went, Ron Foley, and they always liked to go out and have a few drinks, when they were home. So he was married too. He wrote his wife, and I don't know how he got by it, but he worked in the PX, the store deal.
Post exchange.
So his wife tried to send him a bottle of whiskey in a loaf of bread she had taken, and she took the cork out of the bottle and stuffed it with something. But they still discovered it here at the post office in Bay City, and they knew they had what was his name, Schindler or something like that was head postmaster. So he didn't get after the wife too much, but they didn't try to send him any more whiskey anyway.
would the post office get after people for
Oh, yeah, you
Couldn't
can't.
send any liquids,
Oh,
and particularly they didn't want anything flammable like lighter fluid or whiskey. In case it was crushed, well then it created a fire hazard and also damage to other mail.
uh-huh.
But Virginia and Rita, they got a bottle of liquor over. See, that too was rationed back home. So to get a bottle of liquor, that was hard. But they got me a bottle,
I didn't know they had gotten you one over
Yeah.
finally.
and they filled it. The reason for filling it was so there was no gurgle
Yeah.
when the postal inspectors handled it. And then they taped the cork on so it wouldn't come off. But they got pretty good at. Everybody got good at packing.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the cookies, those were the big things that were sent. Mama made some mincemeat,
Yeah.
mincemeat and date
Those mincemeat bars I've made,
bars, and
Mhm.
they traveled very good. They were still moist and they didn't break up. But other packages of cookies, people were dumb sometimes. They'd make sugar cookies, which are brittle to begin with, and wouldn't pack them, so they'd move about in the package, and when they got over there were nothing but crumbs. But people that sent me stuff, they were pretty smart about it. All the way from newspapers, crumpled newspapers for packing. Empty toilet paper rolls were good. They took up the space and they took up shock in the empty spaces in the box.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I wouldn't have thought of that one. Of course, now we got the styrofoam peanuts, so
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, when did you get home then? In 45?
December 45.
December 45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then life's going to start all over again, right?
Right.
Pretty much, yeah.
Where did you move to then? Back to
Well-
Van Buren Street?
Yeah, Mama moved back a month before I got home. That would have been, she moved there in November,
Yeah.
and then I got home about the 15th of December.
See, I had rented the house to a young couple, so.
So you kicked them out.
Yeah. I let
You
them
and
know
Jimmy moved
a
back
good
in?
month ahead of time, you know.
That's the only way. See, they had rent control in too, and the only way you could evict anybody was non-payment of rent, of course, and even then you had to go through law to evict them, or you had to move in yourself. It's the only way you could force anybody out, even if they were paying rent and if you had a relative or somebody that you wanted to rent to in place of the first party, well, you couldn't evict them.
They were nice. I didn't have any trouble getting them out.
But it was a fact of life at that time.
Yeah.
And the rent was strictly controlled.
Then we had to wait for a whole year for a car,
Oh, yeah.
So you didn't have a car for a year?
because Dad had well, practically a brand new car when he went in the service, and he still owed a little money on it, so he had just gotten it about a year before we were married, and so we sold it.
Had to sell it because no way we were going to make the payments. Incidentally, Mama didn't get an allotment check. See, they took $23 or $27 out of my $50 paycheck every month, and the government made up the difference to $50 for wives or something like that. So Mama was going to get $50 a month. But geez, it was at least 6 months, I think, before you got it. 5 or 6 months
Yeah.
before she got her first check. So it was a darn good thing that I had sold the car, because the difference between what we owed and what we got was what sustained her until she got her first allotment check.
And the wives were expected to live on $50 a month?
Yeah,
Remember?
yeah.
Even back then, that wasn't very much money.
No, it wasn't. Not really.
But then
Not for a whole month.
yeah, we were buying the house too, but the banks couldn't foreclose on a serviceman's house. The interest kept going, but they couldn't foreclose until reasonable time after he got out of service. I think a year. You didn't have to catch up your payments, but you had to resume making payments on it.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, your mortgage could be extended.
Where did you go to work when you got back?
I went back to the Bay City Dairy first, and
And did they have to hold your job while you were gone?
you had to get a job. They didn't. You didn't necessarily get the same job. It had to be an equivalent.
Okay.
But the companies, not only the Bay City Dairy, but other companies, many of them were stinky about it. See, wages went up during the time that I was in service. And when I came back, I still got the same weekly wage, which was $40 a week at the time. And other employees who had not gone off to war, their wages had gone up. But shortly after, a couple, 3 months later, the City Dairy approached me about going back with them to work in their retail operation, and which I did, and they offered me $60, so, and which was would be about the going wage at the time.
And that was the Bay City Dairy that offered
Bay
you that?
City Dairy is the one where I went back to work, and they paid. They resumed the $40 a week wage that I had when I left.
Oh, so the City Dairy offered you
City
60.
Dairy offered me $60 a week, which was the going wage, at the time I came back. But Bay City Dairy didn't give me that. The law didn't say anything about that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went back to City Dairy.
Were you on the milk routes then? Again?
No,
Oh, they had sold the milk routes before
I
Dad went away.
managed the several City Dairy stores. They had about 5 or 6. I oversaw their operations, and then Gilbert Heller came back. He had worked for them, and but he came back, and he left the City Dairy. He left to try to go on his own in Wisconsin and northern Michigan. He wanted to establish an operation similar to the City Dairy, but he couldn't find one, a place that he felt confident about. So he came back and bought into the City Dairy Company, and he became a 10% partner. Well, he took over then the operation of the various stores, and I then managed the main store on Columbus and Van Buren. Did that for probably a year, and the City Dairy wanted to expand to owner-operated stores. So there was an empty building on Woodside and Atlantic, right near the Essexville line. It had been empty for years, and there was a big 3-apartment home attached on the same property. So we sold our house on Van Buren and bought that